tower of sail on the water, the brigantine Asgard2, named after Erskine Childers' gun-running yacht of 1914. Larch, for the boom and bowsprit of the new sail training vessel, was felled in Avondale in County Wicklow. John Tyrrell, builder in Arklow of Sir Francis Chichester's Gypsy Moth III, designer and builder of Asgard2. In the moulding loft, he checks a mould with the lines of a plan. Asgard's keel has been laid down already, but the shed that should be borne in isn't finished when Robert Malloy, Minister for Defence in 1979, arrives to perform the bolt driving ceremony in April.
Turn it over now. Hit it. Yeah. Why you take it out now, Jack? I'm sure all of you would like to join with me in wishing Mr. Tyrrell and his staff every success over the coming months in putting together this wonderful craft which he himself has designed, and we look forward with great interest to the completion of Asgard2.
The moulds are taken off plans, and every part of the ship is taken off a mould. The flooring, binding the oak timbers together. A modern high-speed drill alongside the shipwright's oldest tool, the adze. It's being used by the foreman shipwright, Nicholas Tancred. Each frame is a numbered part of a plan that's been transferred to a mould. One more oak frame rises to be settled on the hog of the keel. Arklow men and Arklow skills. The sea, or its influence, shows at every corner of Arklow on the east coast of Ireland. John Tyrrell's drawing office overlooks the dock and the banks on which his fishing ancestors became the builders and repairers of their own boats and then of other people's.
Yes, I would think so. There's really no family history recorded except handed down by word of mouth, but my grandfather served his time as a shipwright in Arklow, and somewhere in the early 1860s he went to Devonport. He worked in about 1861 on the last of the wooden warships built. Came back here and he set up business on his own account in 1864.
There are a lot of other shipping families, aren't there, in
yes. I would think at that time that pretty well every family in Arklow is seafaring or fishing in some form.
The first time I heard, it was in the West, somebody describing an Arklow-built boat, said that she had a duck stern, and it was known as the duck stern. That is the cruiser stern.
First example of that was the Ofoka, which my father built in 1907 as the first motor fishing vessel in the British Isles. He also adopted this rather unique stern at that time.
Did you get any training in this wonderful mechanical drawing and design that you're doing?
Oh yes, with my father and my grandfather.
And did your father go away and get a formal training, or was
No,
it just...
he studied from his father.
And
the old man, I suppose, picked it up as he went along. In my grandfather's time, there were more models, carved models than actual drawings. They carved models from wood. Layers of wood were put together to scale, and the model was formed out by eye rather than by any calculations.
And then they built the ship.
And then they took these pieces apart and measured them up and built the boat according to their shape.
All her frames are in place now, held together temporarily by those white head battens, like a fish on its backbone. Behind that black hole is the steam box, used to soften timber so that it could be shaped round curves. Asgard's hull planking is of Iroquois wood, a sort of teak that comes from the Gold Coast. First, the timber goes into the steam box. Everyone lends a hand.
Down, down.
When the hot timber comes out of the steam box, it will be clamped on like this.
Hold her up, boy. Up. Up, boy. Can you up any more?
Another plank for the starboard side. Long galvanized spikes will be driven home into the frames through holes prepared for them. While the hull is taking shape, other work is going on. Her suit of sails is being made in Baldoyle. Each sail is made up out of bolts of terraline rolled out on the polished floor of the sail loft. Asgard's motor launch is finished already. Those are her deck houses, long ready. In another of Tyrrell's yards, the original one, the foremast, is ready. This will be the platform. The masts aren't single timbers. They're built up out of sections and planed into shape. This strength does away with the need for the old-fashioned separate topmast. In the background, a lifeboat being serviced. In the foreground is Asgard's bowsprit, and under it will be her figurehead. Her figurehead is being carved in Dublin by Colm Brennan. He lives in Ballantyre, but his mind is on Asgard's bows in Arklow.
The wood itself is yellow pine. It's a Scandinavian wood and it's the traditional wood used for figureheads. The model is based on Grania Whale, Grace O'Malley, the Irish sea queen. Being a Mayo man, it seemed appropriate that I would use her as a model. I discussed the thing, of course, with Jack Tyrrell, the naval architect, and he was anxious that it would be a female figure. He said it shouldn't be too ferocious for a peacetime vessel. So I arrived at this idea of a figure with a hand clasped on a sword and the other hand on her brow as if gazing out to sea.
Her top timbers are standing up and Asgard's hull is almost complete. The last to go in on one side, the shutter it's called, is the hardest to put in. It must be the exact size.
Yeah.
The spikes are driven in deep and their tops are sealed off by glued dowels. They're trimmed flush with the hull. The seams are filled with oakum, driven in with a caulking iron. Seam filler, a sort of putty, seals off the caulking. Not every part of Asgard's made of wood. Her metal forward bulkhead has been built, and now it's going into place to divide off part of the ship. Nicholas Tancred seems to be everywhere, like many of the other workers. A shipwright has to have a lot of skills. This is real joinery. Deck beams and mast partners. Everything dovetails. Soon, all of this will be hidden by the teak deck planking. Down below, 3 of the 6 freshwater tanks have been put in place. Now the time has come for the deck houses to be put aboard. Almost as soon as the pilot house has been secured, the radio gear goes in. Asgard has 2 radio telephones working on different frequencies, as well as a Decca navigator and the usual echo sounder and radar. Below the pilot house, the cooker has gone into the galley. It will have to feed 25. Below the galley, the engine. 150 horsepower and a range of 500 miles. The generator supplies power. The stern tube and the rudder frame is in place. The windlass has been put on the foredeck. Its anchor cable will come through here. Everything's moving. This octagonal hole will receive the shaped forms. The quarters begin to show that one day they'll be habitable by 20 trainees. The permanent crew of 5 will be aft. The heads, still so cold from their ancient position in the forepart of the ship. An officer's cabin, nearly complete, but there's still a lot to be done to the saloon. This is the steering telemotor that takes the strain off the helmsman. Now, rudder complete, but the wheels yet to come. The netting under the bowsprit's an important safety measure. It's being rigged by John Tyrrell's son, John. Everything's coming together quickly now, but this port light won't be there long. The raw wood gets its priming coat. Everywhere, youth is building for youth, for sea-minded boys and girls. Experienced Arklow heads guide them. On the 15th of December, Asgard was ready for her first move. A very slow lateral movement to the point of exit on bogies. The hauling cable takes the strain. Inch by inch, she begins to crab across the shed. Her first and last crawling over the floor she was born on. In her second position, Asgard got her final coats of paint. January the 16th, 1981, Asgard's hauled into the open air along these rails. Very slowly, inch by snail